The elevator rose to the fourth floor of the Lexington Hotel, October 15, 1930. Eliot Ness adjusted his .38 revolver under his coat as the brass doors opened. Down the hallway, behind double oak doors, sat the most dangerous man in America. Al Capone had just lost $2 million in brewery raids. His phone lines were tapped. His men were being arrested daily. And now a 27-year-old federal agent was walking uninvited into his private suite. What happened in the next 20 minutes would escalate into a war that would paint Chicago's streets red with blood. Chicago, fall 1930. The city belonged to Al Capone, but cracks were showing in his empire. For 18 months, Ness and his Untouchables had been systematically destroying Capone's bootlegging operations. 20 breweries destroyed, 50 trucks seized, $9 million in lost revenue, and Capone was getting desperate. The war had started quietly. In January 1930, President Herbert Hoover had given a direct order, get Capone. U.S. Attorney George Johnson created a two-pronged attack. Tax investigators would follow the money. Prohibition agents would destroy the source. Leading the Prohibition team was Special Agent Eliot Ness, a college-educated, incorruptible young man who had just done the impossible. He de-assembled a team of honest cops in the most corrupt city in America, the Untouchables. That's what the newspapers called them. 9 men who couldn't be bought, threatened, or broken. They earned the nickname when Capone's lawyer, surrounded by bodyguards, approached Ness outside the federal building with a leather briefcase containing $10,000 in cash and a weekly promise of $2,000 more. Mr. Ness, the lawyer had said, his voice smooth as silk, Mr. Capone respects your dedication, but he also believes in practical solutions. This is for your family's comfort. And there's more where this came from. Ness had looked at the money, then at the lawyer. Tell Mr. Capone that law enforcement in Chicago is not for sale. Not anymore. The lawyer smiled coldly. Everyone has a price, Mr. Ness, everyone. And if money won't buy you, perhaps other arrangements can be made. The threat was clear. If Ness wouldn't take the bribe, Capone would find other ways to stop him. What the crime boss didn't understand was that threats only made Ness more determined. Within weeks, the Untouchables struck their first major blow. The brewery raid in Chicago Heights. 18 stills destroyed in one night. The operation was surgical, coordinated, devastating. Each team hit their targets simultaneously, preventing tip-offs or escapes. By dawn, Capone's monthly production had been cut in half. But raids were just the beginning. Ness had something more valuable than violence: intelligence. Through wiretaps, inside informants, and careful surveillance, the Untouchables mapped Capone's entire operation. They knew when shipments moved, where money changed hands, which officials were on the payroll. The corruption ran deeper than anyone imagined. Police captains who cleared $50,000 a year on government salaries of $3,000. Judges who dismissed cases for envelopes of cash. City councilmen who rezoned properties for Capone's brothels and gambling houses. Federal agents who sold raid schedules to the highest bidder. One of Ness's most disturbing discoveries came from a wiretap on Capone's business manager, Jake Greasy Thumb Guzik. The recording captured a conversation about disciplining a speakeasy owner who'd refused to buy Capone's liquor exclusively. Take him to the warehouse, Guzik's voice crackled through the surveillance equipment. Let Nitti show him what happens to people who forget their manners but keep him alive. Can't pay if he's dead. Frank Nitti, Capone's enforcer, a stone-cold killer who specialized in sending messages. 2 days later, the speakeasy owner was found beaten so badly his own wife didn't recognize him. He lived, as Guzik wanted, but he never walked normally again, and he never again questioned where he bought his liquor. These weren't just business disputes. This was systematic terrorism, and Ness documented every piece of evidence. But evidence gathering was dangerous work. 3 times, Capone's men had tried to kill members of the Untouchables: car bombs, ambush shootings, poison in the coffee at their surveillance post. Each attempt failed, but the message was clear: back off or die. Ness didn't back off. Instead, he escalated. The raid on Capone's main distribution center netted $50,000 worth of Canadian whiskey and 37 arrests. The seizure of the Montmartre Cafe revealed Capone's entire financial structure, including bank accounts in 3 states and detailed records of political bribes. By October 1930, Ness had cost Capone over $9 million and arrested nearly 200 of his men. The crime lord was hemorrhaging money, losing territory, and facing federal indictments. He was also losing control of his legendary temper. The breaking point came October 14th. Ness's team raided a brewery so close to Capone's headquarters that the crime boss could hear the explosions from his hotel suite. When Capone sent enforcers to intimidate the federal agents, they found empty offices. The Untouchables had anticipated retaliation and moved their base of operations. That night, Capone made a mistake that would haunt him. In a rage, he personally called the federal building and demanded to speak with Ness. "You think you're smart, you college boy." Capone's voice was thick with fury and alcohol. "You think you can come into my city, my territory, and embarrass me?" Ness, recording the conversation, kept his voice calm. "Mr. Capone, this is the United States of America. It's not your city, and it's not your territory. Everything north of Roosevelt Road belongs to me. Every cop, every judge, every politician. You're just a tourist here, Ness, and tourists who overstay their welcome. Sometimes they disappear. Is that a threat, Mr. Capone? It's a promise. The line went dead, but the damage was done. Capone had just threatened a federal agent on a recorded phone call. It was evidence that would later be used in court. More importantly, it was personal now. Ness decided to do something unprecedented, confront Capone face to face. October 15th, 4:47 p.m. The Lexington Hotel, Capone's fortress. The 11-story building served as headquarters, home, and symbol of his power. On any given day, 50 armed men patrolled its halls. Corrupt cops provided security. Politicians held court in its speakeasy. It was the last place any law enforcement officer should go alone. But Ness wasn't planning to arrest Capone. He was planning to deliver a message. He walked through the lobby like he owned it. Expensive suits, diamond jewelry, and the cold eyes of professional killers tracked his movement. Everyone recognized him. The newspapers had made him famous, but no one moved to stop him. Capone's orders were clear. Let him come up. The elevator operator, a thin man with nervous hands, asked, "What floor, sir?" For Ness replied. His voice was steady, but his hand rested on his weapon. The 4th floor, Capone's private domain. As the elevator doors opened, Ness saw 2 men in expensive suits flanking the hallway. They patted him down professionally but didn't find the small .38 hidden in his ankle holster. They took his service weapon but missed the backup. "Arms up, spread M," the first bodyguard commanded. Ness complied. The search was thorough but not perfect. In a building full of violence they expected hidden weapons, but they underestimated federal preparation. The double oak doors opened to reveal a scene from another world. The suite was lavishly appointed, oriental rugs, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings that belonged in museums, and in the center, behind a mahogany desk, sat Al Capone. At 31, Capone was at the height of his power and the beginning of his downfall. His face bore the scars that had earned him the nickname Scarface, 3 parallel lines across his left cheek from a knife fight in his youth. He was impeccably dressed, a 3-piece silk suit, gold watch, diamond cufflinks, but his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator. "Agent Ness," Capone said, not rising from his chair. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" Mr. Capone. Ness remained standing. "We need to talk, do we? I thought we'd said everything there was to say over the phone." 4 other men occupied the room. Frank Nitti stood by the window, his hand inside his jacket. Jake Guzik sat in a leather chair, sorting through papers that looked like financial records. 2 other enforcers flanked the door behind Ness. "You've been making threats," Ness said directly. Capone smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Have I? I don't recall making any threats. Do you, Frank?" Nitti shook his head silently. "Perhaps you misunderstood our conversation. Agent Ness, perhaps the phone connection was poor. The connection was perfect, and the recording was clear." For the first time, Capone's composure cracked slightly. He hadn't expected Ness to admit to recording the call, but he recovered quickly. Recordings can be misinterpreted. Sometimes people hear what they want to hear. Ness stepped closer to the desk. The 2 enforcers behind him tensed, but Capone raised a hand to stop them. "Let me be clear, Mr. Capone, my family, my men, my operation, they're all under federal protection now. If anything happens to any of them, if they have so much as a flat tire or a cold, I'm going to hold you personally responsible." Capone laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You're threatening me in my own hotel. Agent Ness, I think the pressure of your job is affecting your judgment. And if I turn up dead, if I have an accident, if I disappear, well, the federal government has contingency plans for that too. Plans that involve taking apart your organization, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but broken bones and prison cells." The room fell silent. Even Nitti seemed impressed by Ness's audacity. Capone stood slowly, his bulk imposing even behind the massive desk. "You've got brass, I'll give you that. Coming here alone, talking tough. But let me explain something to you, college boy. This city runs on respect, and respect is earned through strength." He walked around the desk, stopping close enough that Ness could smell the expensive cologne and underlying threat of violence. "I own 3,000 police officers. I own half the judges in Cook County. I own aldermen, state senators, federal agents. I own this city, Agent Ness, and you. You're just a tourist." "Then why are you bleeding money?" Ness replied calmly. "Why are your men getting arrested daily? Why are your breweries becoming piles of rubble?" Capone's face darkened. For a moment, Ness thought the crime boss might strike him. The tension in the room was electric. "You want to play games, Agent Ness? Let's play games." Capone's voice dropped to a whisper. "You cost me $2 million this month, so I'm going to cost you something. Not your life, that would be too easy. Something else. Something that makes you understand the kind of power you're dealing with." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means everyone you care about is now fair game. Your wife Betty, your family back in Chicago, your precious Untouchables. See, you think this is about law and order, but it's not. It's about power. And I have more power in my little finger than you have in your entire federal government." Ness felt his anger rising but kept his voice level. "If you touch my family, Capone, I'll destroy you." "You'll try." Capone smiled again. "But here's what you don't understand about power, college boy. Real power isn't about being right. It's about making people afraid to be wrong. Is that what you call it? Beating speakeasy owners half to death. Murdering anyone who disagrees with you. Corrupting every honest official you can find. I call it business. Capone returned to his chair. And business is good. Will continue to be good long after you're transferred to some quiet posting in North Dakota. Ness made his move. Actually, Mr. Capone, business is about to get very bad for you. He reached into his jacket slowly, careful not to trigger the armed men around him, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. This contains copies of financial records seized from your distribution center, bank statements from accounts in Chicago, Detroit, and New York, correspondence between you and corrupted officials, and detailed records of payments to police captains, judges, and federal agents. He placed the envelope on Capone's desk. I thought you might like to see what we've uncovered. Consider it professional courtesy. Capone opened the envelope and scanned the documents. His face remained impassive, but Ness saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the papers. Of course, these are just copies, Ness continued. The originals are in federal custody, along with testimony from 3 of your former associates who decided cooperation was preferable to prosecution. You're bluffing. I asked Jake there about the conversation he had with Judge Morrison about the Santucci case. The one where he promised $25,000 for a dismissal, or ask Frank about his visit to the warehouse with that speakeasy owner. The one we have photographs of. Nitty's hand moved toward his gun, but Capone stopped him with a look. Even if any of this was true, Capone said carefully, it proves nothing. These men are criminals. Their testimony is worthless. Perhaps, but when combined with physical evidence, financial records, and wiretap recordings, it paints a very clear picture. And grand juries tend to trust federal agents more than bootleggers. Capone stood again, this time moving toward the window that overlooked Lake Michigan. You know, Agent Ness, I could have you killed before you reached the lobby. Yes, you could. And within an hour, this building would be surrounded by federal agents, state police, and military personnel. Your protection would evaporate. Your political allies would disappear. And your organization would be destroyed in a matter of days. Maybe it would be worth it. Maybe. But you're a businessman, Mr. Capone. And businessmen calculate risks. Ness moved toward the door, then paused. There is another option. I'm listening. Retire. Take your money and disappear. Florida's nice this time of year. So is Cuba. Live quietly, and federal attention might focus elsewhere. Capone turned from the window, his scarred face twisted in fury. You want me to run? From you, I want you to be smart. But if you prefer a war, I'm ready for that too. Get out of my hotel, Ness. Get out before I change my mind about letting you live. I'll be in touch. Mr. Capone. Soon as Ness reached the door, Capone called after him, Agent Ness. Yes, this isn't over. No, Ness replied. It's not. The elevator ride down felt longer than the trip up. In the lobby, expensive suits and cold eyes watched him leave. But now there was something different in their expressions. Uncertainty, fear. If a federal agent could walk into Capone's private suite and walk out alive, maybe the crime boss wasn't as untouchable as they'd believed. Within 24 hours, the war escalated beyond anything Chicago had ever seen. 2 of Ness's informants were found beaten to death. A bomb exploded outside the federal building. 3 untouchables were ambushed while conducting surveillance, and Capone's response to the meeting was clear. No quarter asked, none given, but Ness had achieved his goal. The confrontation forced Capone to react emotionally instead of strategically. The crime boss's retaliation was swift, brutal, and sloppy. Each act of violence provided more evidence, turned more witnesses, and gave federal prosecutors more ammunition. The final irony came 6 months later. On June 5, 1931, Al Capone was indicted on 22 counts of income tax evasion. The evidence that convicted him came not from the violent confrontation at the Lexington Hotel, but from the careful financial investigation Ness had mentioned. But the war itself, the systematic destruction of Capone's bootlegging empire that was won by the Untouchables, by men who couldn't be bought, threatened, or broken, by federal agents who walked into the lion's den and came out alive. Al Capone was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. He served his time in Atlanta and Alcatraz, his health broken by syphilis, his empire scattered to the winds. He died in 1947, a shadow of the man who once owned Chicago. Eliot Ness lived to be 54, dying of a heart attack just as his book The Untouchables was being published. He never became wealthy or famous during his lifetime, but he proved something important, that in America, no one is above the law, not even Al Capone. The confrontation at the Lexington Hotel lasted 20 minutes, but it marked the beginning of the end for organized crime's golden age. Sometimes the bravest thing a lawman can do is walk into a room where death is waiting and deliver a simple message. Justice is coming. If this story of courage, corruption, and the ultimate price of power moved you, let us know in the comments. Would you have had the guts to walk into Al Capone's private suite? And subscribe for more untold stories of the men who fought organized crime when the odds were stacked against them. Because next week, we're retelling you about the night Frank Nitti tried to kill Eliot Ness's family and what happened when the Untouchables decided to take off the gloves.